Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome to the Craig and Greg Show. I'm Craig. This is Greg. We're sitting here, same podcast, brand new table, brand new Maximize Leadership studio that we're glad to be a part of. We are celebrating July 4th, the birthday of our country, although technically July 2nd is when it got passed. Didn't get everything signed till the 4th. But, you know, we focus on leaders. We love talking about leadership. How would you equate patriotism and leadership? How do those two topics go together?
I think one of the aspects, nice shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you. You as well.
Exactly. We went with color coordinations, but then they said not identical. But we are close. We're identical. I think patriotism, like leadership, requires a lot of loyalty, commitment. Mm-hmm. Patriotism is, it's kind of almost a sell out to the cause, sell out to the country, sell out to the precepts of what started something. And I think when, particularly entrepreneurs, they're really sold out to the core of what they started.
Sure.
Leaders, whether it's a school or a church or a business, have to apply a lot of those same qualities to how they live and lead and serve others, as well as they expect that from their associates or teammates.
Right. Now, there is a distinction in terms that you and I were talking about. There's patriotism and then there's nationalism.
Yes.
So elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, I think patriotism, this sounds like my civics teacher in high school. Hello, Mr. Roddy. Anyway, I think patriotism is a positive element. It's drawn to something. There's maybe a piece of sacrifice that's required. If you're really going to be patriotic, like you're going to honor someone else or where this has come from or what they came out of. I think nationalism tries to be, I guess it is a little more negative. It can be a little bit of, we all need to be nationalistic. We all need to be the same.
Right.
And that's not really the same because our country started and had different elements and chapters, whether they were wars or they were governmental moves or the expansion of the United States, as we speak of America. I think that's the challenge with leaders is it's not just in your four walls or inside your office or your boardroom. It's a bigger map. And nationalism tries to get everybody kind of in the same fold. Patriotism just says it's the country. It's not a specific piece.
Well, there's a phrase that you like to use, whether we're talking about the country or a company, this idea of being inside out. Yeah. Elaborate on that.
Well, I had a really good pastor friend, in addition to you.
Of course.
But he really was kind of got perturbed about our church being, we're serving ourselves. You come in, you look real good, you drive your Lincoln, you put your best suit on, do your hair up on a Saturday. Just, it's not really that sort of a performance. It's about coming to be fueled up so you can go be something outside of the four walls of the church. That's not really church as four walls. It's when you leave and go be something for someone else, another cause, a group, your company. So I think that's what I enjoy about inside out as an analogy. It's a little self-serving if we just think inside.
Absolutely. Well, I have always, when I'm looking at somebody that might have leadership potential, I love seeing them involved in a nonprofit volunteer organization. When you can lead a team that you don't have any authority over them, like you can't pull the trigger and say, all right, I'm sorry, we're going to have to fire you. You're not going to be a part of our team. When you don't have that, because hey, I'm just a volunteer, that shows some real leadership moxie that you can do that. And I think the same thing about being a good citizen. You can't go to somebody who's maybe not exercising good citizenship and say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go. You're going to have to pack your bags.
Yeah, they're still a citizen. Yeah.
Right. So in other words, you can be a leader wherever you are. You don't have to have a title. You don't have to have any authority over somebody, but you can still change the culture around you if you're leading in the right way.
There was a movement about team building exercise facilities. You go outside and do a ropes course or trust exercises. And what I find fascinating is when you go to those team building, you bring a team of 10. Well, there's maybe, let's say it's a company, for example, there's a CEO, CFO, et cetera. Well, no one has those badges.
Right.
And that team building exercise really does make people wrestle with, well, but she's the vice president of finance. this isn't finance. This is a ropes course.
Yeah.
Or this is trying to get 4 tires over the mud with everybody not getting wet, or whatever the exercise is. I love team building because it doesn't matter your pedigree, education, where you came from. It's you got to solve this team problem together.
Yeah.
And patriotism is almost like that. Everyone's together.
Right.
It's not, oh, that's that group. Carve it out. That's not what patriotism is. Nationalism really doesn't want any uniqueness to groups. They want it all kind of conformity, maybe a little more of the same. But I love the inside out, and I love the team building exercise because you do get rid of all titles. It's just amazing where people can grow and stretch. Oh, wow, they listen to me. That's how they lead.
Well, I mean, I think about even so if we're talking about on a national level, Chuck Colson had a great phrase where he said that politics is always downstream from culture. So what's happening in your backyard ultimately is going to affect what's happening in our case, in Washington, D.C.
Right.
But that just happens on this one-to-one basis. I have to make the decision that I'm going to be a good citizen, that I'm looking out for my neighbor, that I want to do the golden rule, or the great commandment from Jesus to love God and then love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
When I do that, it begins to change. I don't have to, not that there's anything wrong with being in an elected position,
right.
But I don't have to be an elected office holder to make a change.
No.
And neither do I have to be a person with a title in an organization to make a change.
So when we met a couple months ago, totally kidding, a couple decades ago, you shared a really cool story about your grandpa in Ohio, and what he thought was leadership and ministry. Share that with the listeners.
My grandfather was a very successful businessman, and his philosophy was that in a church setting, it's not the person that's just the pastor or on staff that is ministering to people or is living out these biblical principles. And so he had a very deep baritone voice.
Oh, love it.
And I would be with him at times so he'd be sitting at a table at lunch with all other business people around there, and he wouldn't ask, may I pray over the food or say grace before the food? He would just announce. He would just say, I'm going to say grace. And then in his baritone voice, he just closed his eyes and he'd always start his prayer like this, our Father and our God, with this deep baritone voice. And he would just start praying. He didn't say to anybody, stop doing what you're doing because I'm praying. He didn't say, would you like to join us in this prayer or anything like that? He just said, hey, I'm going to pray. My grandson and I are sitting here. We're going to pray over our food and give God thanks for it. But everybody respected that.
Right.
And they said, oh, yeah, what does it really hurt? I mean, if you're saying thank you for the food that we have.
I do think one of the points that we were chatting about before we started recording was the gratefulness about being patriotic.
Sure.
They seem to go together. Mm-hmm. The more patriotic, you can look back and say the person's more grateful.
Sure.
And then vice versa. The person who is less patriotic or angst about a country is you are very miserable. You're not grateful. And I think that the level of patriotism grows as we decide to take thanks, the position of it, and then give gratitude, whether it's to God or fellow mankind, for something.
Right.
So I love the story about your grandpa. It's so cool. JFK back then in the 60s was a Democrat. Probably today he'd be a Republican based on, how things are moving. But one of the things that is amazing, and the Kennedy family is historically an influencer. I mean, they've been in culture forever. They happen to be in politics too. They really included everything. But for me, the quote is, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That to me is the dividing line of patriotism or I want to be entitled. Mm-hmm. And it's a challenge for us in our hearts because humanity is, I'll take something for free. And that's not really patriotism. Patriotism is doing something for freedom.
Right. Well, and I think even inside of a company, when somebody's just like, if they have the idea of you owe me this job versus I'm grateful that I was able to get education, that I was able to get experience, that you were successful enough to be able to need to hire somebody, and that you hired me. And so I'm grateful to be here, a part of this team. Yeah. That's going to, if you will, the patriotism inside the company or the organization, because of your gratitude for, hey, I'm able to be here. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for what we're able to do as a result of this, versus, just kind of sitting there going, this is my job description. This is all I'm doing. Yeah. Don't ask me to go 1 minute past this time. Don't ask me to do, fill out one form outside of my portfolio. Just give me my paycheck. And, that's kind of a little bit of, JFK saying, okay, so what are you going to do for me? Instead of saying, how can we do this together? I'm grateful for where I am. And so let me try to give something back as well. Yeah. Ask, what can I do here? Yeah.
I think kind of to wrap up a little bit of what I think patriotism is to the leaders who are listening and they're serving others, is there's an aspect to me about allegiance, a loyalty that really comes out of patriotism. And I think the other part is your attitude.
Oh, yeah.
And then the equal sign, then it's action. It's one thing to say something, and we've been around folks, whether they're in high-level leadership or mid-level leadership, is their actions speak a little louder than their words.
Yep.
And you can say, "Oh, I love this," but you don't see that. Right. I love healthy food, and you're thinking, "Yeah, you got 20 pounds you could lose, and you could sleep a lot better. You wouldn't need that CPAP machine or whatever." So it's like your words are one thing, but then your actions are another. And I think that's important for us as leaders. And we're all growing as leaders. It's not like you've arrived. It's not a finish line.
Absolutely.
Often there are chapters, but I think that there are seasons of time. But patriotism, to me, it's one of my favorite holidays is the 4th of July and Memorial Day. It's what we fought for. It's what we're free from. It's what we're free to do. But I think that patriotism, I love it when it's the gun salute or the flyover. Or I was in a store the other day, and gentlemen, I just thought it was just amazing and precious. An older gentleman, he had the army hat with all the confetti, all the insignias on it, and he served in the Korean War. So he was older. And I just walked by and I said, "Hey, thanks for serving. Thanks for supporting me." And he's what? 75 or 80, 80, 85, or whatever. More, yeah. I didn't dare ask him. It'd be an insult, but I just loved being able to share. Thank you for serving.
Yep.
And they just swell up, and they should. Yeah. I mean, they sacrificed to do this, to help us be where we're at and where we can be as a country. Yep. So,
well, that's really our challenge for you is wherever you are, you can make a difference.
Amen.
If you're willing to what you believe and you're grateful for what you've been given, and then out of that overflow of gratitude, you just want to give back, whether it's inside your company or whether it's just inside your neighborhood and your family. And you know what? The actions that you do have a cumulative effect. They have a domino effect. You're going to raise up the people around you, and everything is going to get better. So don't complain. I think all complaining does is just say that somebody else is in control of you.
Ooh,
but
I like that, yeah.
you don't have to be a complainer. Change some things. Look at your own attitude. Begin to make changes where you are, and that's what we're here for. We're here to resource you in that. We love when you get back in touch with us. You can comment on the video below. You can tweet at us at Maximize Podcast and say, "Hey, look, here's something I'm struggling with. Here's something I'd like to know a little bit more about," and we'll address it in an upcoming episode. And if you really want to get in depth, then go to the MaximizeLeadership.com page and check out our coaching huddles. And that's where we'll really get in depth, really pour into you and invest in you, and help you become an even more impactful leader where you are. So we look forward to interacting with you again soon. Stay in touch with us. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you know when the next episode of the Craig and Greg Show drops.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the Craig and Greg Show.